Welcome to Season 2 of Human Can Opener, the ultimate Disco Elysium podcast. In this episode, we're bringing you an exclusive, in-depth interview with none other than Argo Tuulik, a founding member of Zaim and a pivotal creator behind the masterpiece that is Disco Elysium. I want to take a quick moment to point out that there is more at stake here. Argo is currently facing legal challenges and is unable to work due to an injunction. He's launched a GoFundMe campaign to help in his fight. You'll find the link in the description below. Please consider supporting him if you're able. This conversation was so detailed and fascinating that we had to split it into multiple parts. This is part 1. For reference, in this episode, Argo shares his childhood growing up in Estonia as part of the Overcoats, talks about how D&D sparked a love for storytelling, the evolution of the original Zaim group's creative journey, insights into Sacred and Terrible Air, the book by Robert Kurvitz, and then talks about the early steps towards actually developing a game. I hope you enjoy. Hello everybody, this is Season 2 of the Human Can Opener, and a man who needs no introduction really, a hero of mine, and I know he'll blush hearing that, and a hero of many people who I'm sure will be listening to this podcast. It's one of the original Zaim crew, it's Mr. Argo Tuulik. Hello Argo.
Hello. I am indeed blushing very, very much.
So
very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. I think, as I've said to you in the lead up to this and before we hit record, incredibly grateful. I think this will be something that the fans are going to go bananas for. I think you and I will probably go bananas for it throughout because I think we're both excited to talk about some of the things. We don't know exactly how many parts or how long this whole thing's going to be. We started off thinking, well, let's do an episode or whatever, and then I put my questions together and obviously got pretty thorough in the end, so there's a lot to get through. We'll see how it goes. We're fairly relaxed about time. It's Friday night, and let's see what happens. So we have to go back to the start. You'll know that a friend and colleague of yours, Martin Luiga, came on before, and I started in a similar place with him because I think it's a really interesting period. And I would like to know, from your point of view, how did you first come to meet the people we now know to be the original Zaim crew, Robert, Martin, Aleksander, and any others that people may not know of?
Well, honestly, Robert, I met first. Basically, I think I was probably 16 or something like that. And my best friend, my only friend really, but my best friend with whom we went to karate classes together, Indrek, he had this interesting friend group he kept bringing up. And one day I asked him to invite those guys to my 16th, it was literally my 16th birthday. And this basically pretty much was it was still missing Martin, but the rest of the group, the rest of these 8 guys, were what later became known as the Overcoats movement. Mm-hmm. Let me take this moment to say that this is one of the worst translations possible. In Estonian, the world is mantlit. It has this grandeur, mystique to it, and the English Overcoats, it just sounds like I don't know, like early Google Translate had made it. But I met this group and Robert on my 16th birthday. I think literally the day after he came. It turned out that we lived like 200 meters apart or something like that. Literally a couple of project buildings separated, and he came to use internet in my place. And this is kind of how we hit it off. But me and Robert are basically the same age. Robert is kind of one year older, but we're all in the same age bracket where climbing the education academic ladder, we're the same, same grades and stuff. And Robert had just gone to Kopli Art School, was the place where Martin Luiga was his classmates. So basically, me and Martin Luiga, from different angles, entered this group of friends together. Mm-hmm. Martin Luiga is a little younger. I think is a year younger than me. So that's how we first met.
It's quite a novel thing for. Go on.
Sorry, I completely forgot Aleksander. Aleksander,
course, yeah.
Aleksander wasn't part of the Overcoats group. It's this weird, funny thing. The Overcoats. I think if you want, I can later talk more about that as well. But the Overcoats was in an Estonian counterculture landscape, kind of a noticeable enough phenomena that people started kind of paying attention. Sounds maybe too much, but people started noticing it. And one day, probably like, let's say 2 years after I was taken into the group, I get a phone call on my landline, and I can hear this giggling on the other end. And basically, it's spoiler alert, it's Rostov. I don't know that it's Rostov yet, but someone on the other end is asking me like, hey, like, can you tell me where there was this particular cafeteria where we all used to go and sit, one Graal. It's also theater. He's asking me, can you tell me what is the table the Overcoats sit in one Graal? And I'm completely assuming that this is someone is pranking me, punking me over the phone. So I don't know. I was probably a little bit rude or something, but in reality, Rostov and his group of friends had kind of, I don't want to say fanboy. That sounds like I'm putting the Overcoats above them. But because there was like an age difference, you could say that they were kind of looking up to us a little bit and showing interest. And I think from that moment, it still took like a year, maybe a little bit more, 2 years, till I think Martin Luiga was the first one who actually made contact with Rostov, started inviting him to events, birthday parties, and this is kind of how we hit it off. But timeline-wise, Rostov integrating with Robert, Luiks, and myself, this is already, the Overcoats have already kind of tapered off. Internal strife happened, and big egos, we split apart.
Yeah, of course. And it happened again many years later.
It happened multiple times.
Well, do you know what? I always think the best friends are the ones that have the fiercest arguments. We'll talk more about friendships later, I'm sure. Just to stay on so I was going to say, it's quite a novel thing for a bunch of young kids, especially in a 2025 lens as we are now, to do something like come up with a group name in school time and have it as something as, I mean, the English translation, as you rightly point out, makes them sound like a group that Scooby-Doo were trying to track down, right? The Overcoats. It sounds kind of like Dick Mullen would be tracking the Overcoats, right? So, like, is that a product of just the way that Estonian culture was at the time? Because I know you lived in an interesting period in Estonia. So was it kind of just people looking for identities and things like that? How did it kind of come about?
Yeah, I think like a large part of it was people looking for identities. Again, Estonia is such a small country, and this kind of culture group is so small. You have the punks, you have the skinheads, the metalheads. I think back then hip hop was a little bit of a subculture, but in general, like maybe I'm playing fast and loose with the number, but I'd say it's like 1,000 people, 1,500 people, or something like that. And the people who became the Overcoats, I think like one big unifying factor there was that at least 4 or 5 people in that group were all dropouts from one of the elite primary schools, not just primary schools, also high schools in Estonia, the Tallinn English College. Robert was from there. Kaspar, another person credited for Elysium world building on the cover of Robert's book. He's from there, and there's a lot to say about this elitism of this school. but there is also like a certain element of class that it brings. And what it definitely brought that was new to me, that I've never been in any of the elite school, was this how do I say it? Respect of knowledge. Like most of the schools that I went to, the popular attitude was books are shit, I don't read, idiots read. And this kind of this opposite, like yeah, we fucking read. That was a big part of it.
I love that.
There's this major aspect, honestly, like having to do a lot of world building in the last few years. I really started thinking about the very roots of Elysium, and then I got to this point. I want to talk about it a little bit more later, but because it is also very relevant to what you're asking right now, I have to bring it up right now.
Yeah.
In Estonia, in 1984, this prominent anarchist, the only sort of really known anarchist of Estonia, Tõnu Trubetski, he founded a band. They classified themselves as punk rock. In reality, it's more like a melodic folk rock. But this band and the world building that came with this band, in their albums, album designs, in their lyrics, like this world building has, I think, shaped Elysium and all of us, the Overcoats movement, more than anything in the world. Even this word mantel, overcoat, it's featured in so many of the songs. Like "Man with the Black Overcoat" is a very popular song. And it also happens that this man, Tõnu Trubetski, the frontman of this band, the band is called Vennaskond, which is in translation it means brotherhood. And before you assume any Neue Siegfried or fascist connotations, it actually comes from George Orwell's 1984.
Okay.
Brother from there. Anyways, like this had this kind of little bit of anarchist aristocracy. There's this hybrid that you can have a dynamite in one hand, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a cravat around your neck and like a velvet overcoat. Like this was a big stylistic shaper. And also with the overcoats, I never want to miss a chance to add that in addition to the name Overcoats, we also had a slogan or a motto. And again, doesn't translate perfectly, but here it is. Today we drink tea, tomorrow we rule the world. Like there's this little bit of this self-irony in this ambition, of course, rule the world. But there's also like this element of how do I put it? We of course we consumed alcohol a lot, but it's kind of like this. No, we drink tea because we are intellectuals.
Yeah, you're classier. Yeah. I get it. Yeah,
it's a little bit ridiculous because we were all 16, 17, something like this. But at the same time, the more time passes, the more I sort of more respect I have it looking back to it.
Yeah, it sounds like you were very forward-thinking 16-year-olds, to be honest, and that's why I kind of asked if it was, because you don't get 16-year-olds like that really in the UK, right? Most of us are out burning cars and setting people's bins on fire at 16. That's the kind of the thing that we're up to. So it seemed like completely different to what we were getting up to.
Just for the record, we did that too.
Yeah.
Don't we set any cars on fire.
Yeah. I must also put the word allegedly. I allegedly set cars on fire. Sorry, I don't want the police knocking on my door about that. Yeah, I guess you kind of covered it a little bit. It sounds. I was going to ask what was it like for that group of people back then as the second question, but we kind of covered it. It sounds like, for the most part, go on, expand on it if you want to.
I can paint you a little picture, like few more characteristics. If I think about this group, who ended up being nine people who also being able to call yourself an overcoat, it was kind of a privilege. There were some people who were sort of orbiting this group of friends and kind of asking if if I'm an overcoat too. But it's a little bit like like with the Hells Angels, you have the full-fledged members, and then you have the associates, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Eventually, there was 9 of us who were considered like full-time members. What are some of the common themes? Only one of these people had both parents. Like in general, the rest of us, 8 of us, were all raised by our mothers. Weird thing. Then only one of us, ironically, I think the same person, didn't drop out of high school at all. There were some who managed to drop out of high school, but then go back and at least get some sort of a academic degree. But a lot of us are still, actually, I don't know if is it still true to this day, but I think a bunch of us at least are still, I have 9 grades of education. Robert has 9 grades of education. I say it with somewhat of a pride, I guess, but academic path, unfinished academic path is also part of it. With it, as you can imagine, comes certain economic pressure. Like none of us had any money. So this like a average day for us usually was that someone's because none of us, all of us were lying to our moms that we are going to school, which we weren't. So quite often it was everybody exits their apartment at 8 a.m. lying to their mom that they're going to school, and then we're waiting at someone's window for somebody's mom to leave. Like Robert's place was one we frequented quite a lot. It was the time where tobacco and cigarettes were still somewhat affordable. So the first thing was to put together enough money of coins to get a pack of cigarettes, and then sit down in Robert's kitchen and then just smoke till you can't see each other from the other end of the room. Smoke and drink coffee, because kind of the coffee part. This is what made it I guess more acceptable, more intellectual. And in this environment, of course, we were listening not just Vennaskond, although that was the most influential band of that era, but also some Russian music, Western music, and we another thing that was a big common interest was Tolkien, and
of course, yeah.
Talked about Tolkien, and talked about it wasn't called Elysium back then. I think the last version before Elysium, it was called Evermere. But but laying down tracks and planning these campaigns. That's basically what we did. And sorry, I'm a little hectic, but with this economic pressure, don't really have a lot of spending money. Came with this really annoying habit to various cafeteria managers in Tallinn, where you have 9 guys coming in, sitting down. They buy 1 puljong, because puljong was the cheapest thing you could get. I think it cost like 5 Estonian crowns. And then they sit down with this 1 puljong. All 9 of them chain smoking and drink that puljong for 2-3 hours.
It sounds like good fun. I mean, yeah, kids are kids everywhere, aren't they? It sounds very similar to the kind of stuff that we got up to. So you mentioned there that you kind of, during those conversations talking about Lord of the Rings and all the rest of it, you were kind of plotting and planning stories for D&D or your tabletop games. So can you remember the first time someone said, "Hey, Argo, you want to play Dungeons and Dragons?" Can you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. That person honestly was the namesake of Garte, cafeteria manager.
Oh, really?
The guy who proposed first that, hey, do you wanna that we got this thing going? Do you wanna come and join us? And here's some history. Garte, the cafeteria manager, and Robert, they had like a little bit of a rivalry going. Like to be fair, it was kind of how do I say it, one-sided a little bit, because Robert is unbelievably talented. Like I thought it back then. I still think that. And I think, like, maybe I should have said earlier, but that this group of nine people, all of us except me, I think, had some creative aspirations. Like, some people were writing poems, some people were drawing. One person was unbelievable artist. This is the person, Yuri Saks is his name, who drew concepts for the kinema, for example, for Disco Elysium. Anyways, a lot of people had these artistic aspirations, and you could say that that's not the expression we used, but in retrospect, I would say that this is a little bit of a group of Renaissance men happening there. But of course, when you have a group of people with these aspirations, you can't help but compare yourselves to others. And Garte, cafeteria manager, he drew a little bit and he wrote a little bit, and he also wanted to be a dungeon master a little bit. But with all respect, I very much still like Garte, cafeteria manager, but it was never a fair competition. Like Robert was frustratingly good at everything he did. Like even this little you drink coffee and absent-mindedly just scribble on the paper, and it looks turns into this beautiful pattern of roses and swords and stuff. And Garte, cafeteria manager, is throwing little stick figures. in the same way with writing a little bit. And Garte, the cafeteria manager, had gotten his hands on some 3.5 edition Dungeons and Dragons, I think. And because the last one the guys played without this was before me. This is this weird version that is I've sometimes called it 2.5 Dungeons and Dragons, but as I've now gone through some old documents and shit, I think it was actually one of those powered by apocalypse rule sets, not actually 2.5 Dungeons and Dragons. I know Robert has referenced it as bootleg D&D. Something like this, but I think like in actuality, I think it was a powered by apocalypse system. So basically, they were in between games, and what I agreed to join initially was Garte, cafeteria manager's campaign, and yeah, we actually did. We did end up many years later playing it a little bit. But this is a different branch. It doesn't have a lot to do anymore with Elysium, because at that point the strife between Robert and Garte, cafeteria manager, had grown so large they weren't able to play together anymore.
I have to ask now, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Just hearing you talk about the nature of Garte, the cafeteria manager, I'm already getting a sense of why Garte was a kind of conflict character, right? Or there's like all these references from Harry. Oh, it's that Garte always riding my ass. He's trying to make me do this. Does that kind of come from this tension between the two creators? Is would you say that's played a part there, or are they not linked?
Honestly, like, I don't know how to exactly answer that. Like, I would say that Robert nailed the actual real life Garte with the character in Disco Elysium, but nailed it in a way that there's no ill will there, no matter competition or rivalry between them. It's very respectful. I would say. And Garte, cafeteria manager, it's one of those people. I think everyone has one of those people in their lives that you could talk for like days and hours because he's such a character in many ways. But it's also one of those things that to tell it to someone who's never met the guy, I don't know how much of it comes across. He's incredible character. He was the first one of us who made a very serious attempt to grow a beard, and it was one of those, like the 16-year-old beards where you're literally counting separate heads.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines in the opening part of the game. Actually, is how Harry internalizes Garte as the man with the unimpressive beard. Like there's nothing else about him that matters. He's got really, really crap beard. Oh dear. Right. We're getting excited, which I knew would happen. This is why I write the questions down. See, Argo, because I am also in the neurodivergent bucket, and I need something to orient myself. So Garte introduced you to D&D. So would you say that, I mean, was that play through when you went and joined that D&D session, was that more a traditional style wizards, arcane stuff, magic, and your typical D&D setting at that point? I'm guessing so.
Well, here's the thing. Before I can answer that, I need to talk to you a little bit about the sort of nature of playing Dungeons and Dragons in this group of friends. And the nature is that 95% of the time it was talking about playing and not actually playing. When I first met Robert and this group of people at the birthday party, I think they had just finished the play session, or it was a couple of days later. But their session where what they were playing, this was still very much a classical Dungeons and Dragons. Archers. I remember a character. I think it was Kaspar's character called Minor Mortifer, small Deathbringer. There were mages. Very very classical. I never got to play that version, and I think the session that I just mentioned, this was the last session of this iteration, because so much of this what we now call playing tabletop, playing Dungeons and Dragons, it was actually just talking about it, and it's one of those things that to me perfectly illustrates the notion that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Because this part, talking about it, sort of mentally evolving it, advancing it, polishing it, this was so rewarding that I don't know, like in some ways, I think Robert had some subconscious blocks about actually playing it, because when you're trying to actually make something new, it is scary to try it. And honestly, being a game master, it's a scary thing. So for the most smallest ridiculous reasons, game sessions were cancelled. There were so many times when we were supposed to play, but something happened, like, no, we don't have enough cigarettes, like one pack of cigarettes for an entire evening. Come on, we're not playing, but we keep talking about it. Yeah. So let me lay down a couple of iterations. So we have the very first, let's call it Evermere 1.0. This is the most basic, the most rooted into this Powered by Apocalypse system that I didn't get to play. Then after this became a long era, maybe 3 years, something like this. Let's call this Evermere 2.0. This was the era that, let me see, I have this here, that we never got to play it. This is one of these, God, this is almost impossible to get it's across, I think, but this is an example, it's all in Estonian, of a, what you would call a character sheet, but as it is 30 pages, 35 pages or something like this. It's no longer a character sheet. It's a character book. This version no one got to play, because this version we only kind of worked on, evolved. And I say we, but 90% of this is 70% of this is Robert's work. Luiga and Kaspar also did quite a lot. Maybe I shouldn't say these percentages here, because maybe I'm doing injustice right now to Kaspar and Luiga. But this was a major evolution of rules. Like aesthetically, it still retained quite a bit of this very classical tabletop stuff. It had some really great innovations. Now, as I was looking this stuff up and checking dates on the document metadata, I realized one of these documents that was literally the technologist projects dated back to 1997, which is 4 years before Terra Arcanum came out, and actually for the first time on screen gave us the chance to play this technologist fantasy. And it's also remarkable how similar they were in some ways, and how much more ambitious this thing that we never got to try out was. Like this, I know there were 20 different schools of technology, like metal translation between Estonian and English, metallurgia, to optics, like these very, very specific schools of technology. There were another at least 12 classes, different classes of mages. There were so many subclasses of elves. Still looking back, I think it was a lot more stylish and a lot more cool than just out of the box Dungeons and Dragons. I think I've said this in some previous interview, that Robert has this unbelievable ability to look something that already exists and recontextualize it in a way that feels perfectly new and exciting. Like he could take the concept of wheel and hand it to you, and you look at it and you're like, whoa, Jesus, I've never thought of it. And this is very much what he did with this classical Dungeons and Dragons tropes. Like even something as established as necromancers, like what he did was he zoned into this kind of a soul aspect of this. And this is, in some ways, I think he might disagree with me, but I think the very roots of Pale could be traced back to this class of necromancers. Like imagine hobbits, but with these little lanterns that guide spirits or souls from this massive fog. This thing. It's still a very, very huge leap towards Pale, but kind of in my head, when I started looking over these old materials, this is where I traced it. I traced it back to this version. This version. Even amongst us, we were all aware that it is incredibly ambitious, like in some ways ridiculously ambitious. Like by early estimates, the spell book for the mage, all the mages alone was up to 900 spells. And the important thing is that you have, like, all spells are one A4 page. Then you, on the top you have a little bit of the statistics. What does it do? How much damage? Whatever the effects are. And then 2/3 of the page is what we call the bubble. And this is the juicy literary stuff. This is where the world building happens. And this is also where Martin Luiga and Kaspar Kalvet wrote a lot of fantastic stuff, and a lot of like really ridiculous stuff, but ridiculous in this kind of really cute kind of way. You think of it back and you really read it, and it really warms your heart. I think amazing amount of this, how do I say it, like second-hand shaping of what Elysium was back then still Evermere was to become was done there. And this is also in this era. I said earlier that I think it was like 3 years. During these 2-3 years, we were really super hard gearing up to play like this one definitive campaign, like this is it campaign. And this artist that I mentioned earlier, Yuri drew each of us on these giant, I think A3 format papers, a character. Like it's not even, you can't even call it a paper doll because it's basically like concept art to your character. I have no idea where these are nowadays, but they were really unbelievable. Like I don't have enough praise for the guy, and they were so unbelievable that for example, Luix was going to play a elf, sickle elf. Again, it doesn't translate fantastically. Sirbihaldes, sickle elf, and the class of his character was what we called a saint. That was the image of this is this handsome bearded elf from behind with a giant enormous crossbow on his back. The crossbow was called the crucifix, and two katanas or something like this. And Luiks related to this character to a degree where it kind of became part of his persona. Like when I said the class was the saint, and Luiks developed this mode where he sometimes when we were drinking happened to slip in where he started judging people because
yeah.
And I would like to say that it still remained within the boundaries of normalcy, but unfortunately it didn't. Unfortunately, it kind of got into weird territory where you had to ask, dude, can you tell the difference between real and not?
Yeah, where does the saint end?
Exactly, where does the saint end?
So you were moving into this definitive mode then, I guess. Does that predate Elysium or like when did we start thinking about that real world stuff?
This is this is the last step before Elysium, I would say. Around when I think back with all these rules and spells and all this stuff, this stylistic small improvement started happening. Like first of all, and I think this is pretty much synonymous with, not synonymous, but this is basically where Robert started using the word Elysium, was when Roberts decided to get rid of traditional races because they were kind of stupid. There was an in-between stage where instead of just having dwarves, we had these different types of dwarves. Like I remember the Garibaldrin was like a subclass of dwarf who, instead of being stocky and chubby and bearded, were kind of like this a little bit more veiny and imagine like Russian miners, Russian gold miners, this type of thing. And the dwarves basically became what we now know is Grad, or the nations of Grad. The elves were split into now we call it Ilmara, the great desert Isola. This also went through multiple iterations. First it was called Armagast. Armagast is from Dan Simmons's Hyperion. There's the desert planet Armagast, as a sort of a little nod. The name Armagast was dropped for Ilmara, but we still kept the word Erg. There's the Erg Desert in the Ilmara Isola still to this day, which is also a reference to the same Simmons's Hyperion. Then I don't even remember what was the Estonian name for these. Let's call them the Night Elves. Maybe they were the Star Elves or something like this. This eventually, through many iterations, turned into what is Seoul right now. Then Winter Elves, Snow Elves. I think in Estonian they were literally called Lumehalded, which translates to Snow Elves. This turned into Katla. Katla is one of the things that has stayed most unchanged, I would say. The name Katla is just so fucking strong that it didn't need a lot of stylistic iterations. But Katla, by the way, comes from the Astrid Lindgren's book Brothers Lionheart, where the dragon.
Amazing. People are going to love all of this stuff, by the way. Like, you've named bands and inspirations and influences on things that are very, important to people who love Elysium. So it's amazing to hear all of this like background stuff, Argo. Really appreciate it. So, was there any more nations? So, like, I don't want to go too far into Elysium because we're still very much in the beginning bit. So, let me just have a review of the questions. Where did we get up to here? You've said before about Robert being a very good dungeon master and world builder and stuff. Did you ever sit in that chair and do the DM? Did anyone else?
No one else.
No one else. That's
I would,
unsurprising, I think.
Yeah, and also unsurprising in a couple of ways. Honestly, it's hard for me to imagine Robert being in a D&D session where he is not the dungeon master in the first place.
Yeah.
But also from the other end, it's kind of like once you've played with Robert, it's very difficult to follow that up. And why that is? What makes a great dungeon master? Like. From my experience, there's roughly, you could say that there's two types of dungeon masters. One is the type who likes to give their players a lot of freedom. Like, hey, if my players never want to exit the tavern, they can spend the whole gaming session in the tavern.
Mm-hmm.
And the other type is the one whose games are actually good. Like, and Robert is the second one. And I don't know, like as there are different dungeon masters, there are different players, of course, and maybe some players enjoy this kind of freedom, but I've always preferred this confident hand-holding, or this kind of I want to feel that the dungeon master knows where the story is going, and if I'm lingering too long, then they find an organic way to push me forward. Like I guess it's some people like to enjoy the world and the systems, but I really want to enjoy the story, and this is where Robert excelled absolutely.
So if I was to make a comparison to something in the modern world, and it kind of got criticized at the time, have you ever played The Last of Us, or are you aware of The Last of Us's story?
I played the first one, yeah.
So the spoilers for anyone who hasn't by now, I mean, it is like 11 years old, 12 years old, but you know the moment where you go to rescue Ellie and you are forced to shoot the doctor?
Yes, I do know that, yeah.
And it goes like the player has no choice. This is the story they wanted to tell, and they're telling it. Whether you think you should be doing something different, I'm afraid, sorry, but this is exactly the tale, and this is how we want it to end. Was it like that with Robert as a DM? Was it completely locked down to the story he wanted to tell, or was there variance in there?
I would say that, like, technically, yes, it was like that, but it was never this heavy-handed. Like, and I think this is the difference between a great dungeon master and the average dungeon master. A great dungeon master finds a way to put you into this situation where you don't see the railroad. Like, I remember that moment in Last of Us, and like generally, I thought it was a great game, but that moment, like you don't want the player to see the set decorations. You don't want the player to see the railroad so clearly. And this, I'm drawing blank here right now, but I'm sure there are plenty of other games where you can see that they either didn't realize the importance, or they didn't have the time and the resources to find a workaround there to make it feel a little more organic. But honestly, in my opinion, there's always a way you can set it up so that it still feels organic to the player, even if it leaves an illusion of choice there.
Yeah. A BioShock. Are you familiar with the twist in BioShock?
The first one I played, yeah.
Yeah, the whole time the guy is saying, "Would you kindly?" See, now that is when that appears. That is the railroad was there the whole time, right? Yeah. But it was very well considered. It's very, very good. I love that.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Like honestly, I'm in some ways I have to be very grateful for my brain chemistry, because when I'm playing something, I'm so in it that I never see the twists coming. The first Knights of the Old Republic game.
Yes.
When spoiler alert.
Yes.
when I learned that I am Revan, holy shit! Like it hit me like a ton of bricks.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I am desperate to speak to some of those people one day, because I think some of the storytelling in those, like early BioWare era, early Obsidian era, oh my god, it's just incredible. We talked a bit about the nations. Okay, this is a good one. Can you remember some of the first characters you came up with that were kind of very proudly yours in the tabletop days?
Yeah, like let me think. I'm shuffling through my head of these campaigns. Well, I think the very well. Okay, there is a character that is not a player character, kind of an NPC, but it's a character called Moneyval, the Merry Butcher. Like it started out as kind of a joke character, but then in a funny way, it made its way all the way to, well, it's not featured in Disco, but it would have been in the sequel.
Yeah.
You know what? Like actually, let's skip Moneyball, because once we get to talking about the sequel, I probably understand why. But well, I think I still have here a character sheet of, I think that was the very first character I played. I don't know if it focuses at all.
Oh yeah, no, it was all right then. When you zoomed it in, obviously the wide angle doesn't there, but you can see. Obviously, it's all written in Estonian, right?
Yeah, all written in Estonian with the handwriting of someone who clearly has learning disabilities. But this is Elroy Quint Duval. That was the first character I played. Chariot, horse carriage driver for Martin Luiga's character. Martin Luiga played one of the cornerstones of Elysium mythos. This character called Jacob Dister. Sorry, not Jacob Dister. Saul Milton. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. The characters, I don't know if you want to talk about them now. I have got a question later, but seeing we're talking about characters that were created in the tabletop days, Martin, when he talked to me, said that Torson and McLain were kind of yours and his babies, right?
Yeah.
So when did they first come about?
Well, Torson and McLain. Okay, before let me take a little bit of a step back before I get there.
Yep.
When we talk about creating characters, then how do I even approach this? Right. In the same way, like a huge part of making Elysium, playing Elysium was actually talking about it. In the same way, like me and Luix, we had this kind of a hobby, not a hobbit, habit. That because public transportation past midnight in Tallinn was very unreliable. It didn't exist, so quite often we ended up walking. Coming from parties, coming from downtown, we ended up walking to my mom's place, his mom's place, and on the road, I don't know why, but one of the main things we entertained ourselves with was this kind of a mental game. Hey, do you think it would, a character like this would make sense? And usually it was kind of some kind of a joke character. Quite often it was just like a cool name or a one-liner. Mm-hmm. And this is this kind of spontaneous character building. This happened in the background, in parallel to all the Elysium stuff, and kind of formed like a pool of jokes and character traits and little storyline snippets to later draw from in all of the later campaigns, and honestly even writing Disco. With Torson and McLain, before the first play session of Torson and McLain, we had like a prologue session where both of us were playing a different character. I think mine was called Antoine Novak, and Luix, I think, was Trinidad Tranquil. They were two cops just recruited into the RCM, and spoiler alert, they both died in the end of the prologue in a terrorist attack on Station 41, horse bombing. So it was one of those things where, first of all, we wanted to try out this new pace of gaming with this another now solid Elysium, no longer Evermere, Elysium 1.5 or something like that. Wanted to try out the rule set. We wanted to try out the characters, and in the end of the day, we kind of the dice weren't favoring us. So I don't know. Maybe if those characters hadn't died in this situation, that maybe Torson and McLain would have never come to be. So we needed new characters after that, and now enter Torson and McLain. Mac Torson is an amalgamation of Michael Chiklis's character Vic Mackey from The Shield, like 50% Mackey, 50% Argo Tuulik, and Chester McLain 50% Martin Luiga. And I don't honestly know where Luiks took the other 50% of Chester McLain, but this was very much like this projection of self onto characters. And later at some point when we talk about influences, I can go into a bit more on how big of an influence The Shield actually was to what modern day Elysium, or at least anything Elysium related to COPS, RCM, all that stuff. But yeah, this is where the roots of McLain and Torson.
Amazing. And I just want you, because I wasn't recording at the time, I want you to say what you said about my appearance and Mac Torson, so everybody knows.
You could very easily pass for Mac Torson, because Mac Torson looks exactly the same.
There you go. So from now on,
mesh tank top. I think you need to combine it with mesh tank top.
I will get myself. What do they call it? Call it a wife beater. I think they call it
wife
here.
Beater,
you know. That's the one.
Also, Mac Torson had the tabletop. Mac Torson had the map of Revachol tattooed on his back, and somewhere one of the. Like people get tattoos when they're drunk and they're not really sure what the meaning is. He said "Memento Mori." No, Justitia Mori, the dark justice.
Amazing. I love that.
I
don't think I'll get a map of Revachol tattooed, although stranger things have happened. So I did jump ahead a little bit there. Yeah. I did jump ahead a little bit there, Argo, because that was one of my later questions, but it just seemed in the context of where we were at. So I'm going to go back to... Yeah, did any of them... So obviously Torson and McLain did end up as officers of Precinct 41 in the game. Were there any others that made it through past the tabletop into games? Into the game?
Oh yeah, huge! Like I would say, all of them.
Oh, okay.
There's a big list, but with Torson and McLain, they didn't start out as outsiders. We took a little bit of a leap next day after the horse bombing. I think. So when Torson and McLain start. Mac Torson is already a sergeant and the team leader. Chester McLain is his satellite officer, and under Torson's lead are also Sundance Fisher and Michelle Elfboy Williams. These two other junior officers. The four of them also share this bachelor pad where they all four of them live together. Although I think Torson was married as well. Yes, Torson had a wife called Tessa Torson, and a dad called Carson Torson, who had one of these, what do you call it, a whip with multiple...
like a nine tails.
Yes, cat of nine tails, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so we had a whole Torson family.
Yeah, but there was quite a bit of Torson, and well, let me quickly show you something. One of the very first episodes, maybe it was the second episode of Torson and McLain, was Attack on Church. This is literally
amazing.
Little map.
Is that the DeLorean Church, or was it an early version of the DeLorean Church? Because, and I'm jumping a little bit here because the light bulb's gone above my head, but in Disco Elysium, there's reference to an RCM raid on the church in the fishing village, right? Yeah. And I always wondered if all of these, like, and I am really jumping ahead now, spoiling my questions, but like the esprit de corps and references to RCM stuff that's not in the game world, I always wondered, are they little stories that you lifted from the tabletop and wanted to include it? Yeah. Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Although, and this is something I would be very curious what Robert says to this, but the church raid referenced in Disco, in my head, was never this church raid.
Okay.
Like a completely different storyline. But all these little little stories like Tilbrook and Mullins looking at the dead dog next to the radiator.
Yeah,
And,
he's warm because he's next to the radiator.
Exactly.
It's so good. Yeah.
All born out of this little inside jokes or this spontaneous character background that keeps building when you play together. But this was not a Dolorian church. This was literally called the Armed Church of Saint Michel. And I think on this other side you can see a little bit of attack rolls or this attack math.
Yeah.
Combat
amazing,
math.
amazing.
But yeah, like there's a huge amount of characters, and I guess in some ways this Torson and McLain cycle, we didn't know it back then yet, but now with hindsight, it's I can say that this was like a perfect proof of concept to how good of a character development method is the tabletop gaming, because kind of when we actually started making Disco, you could literally lift those characters one for one, and they felt as alive, as much having their agency as they did in the table, because they came to be so spontaneously. Like it's so different when you sit down with this goal that, okay, I need a character who gives you a quest item. You're basically you're trying to now attach snippets into the air. There's nothing to attach them to. But when you have a character that's been around for a couple of tabletop sessions, even if it's a couple of one-liners that they've thrown in your direction, this image that you're building in your head is already there. So now when you need to actually use them, it literally feels like you're using your friend or something like this.
Sort of, it ends up more like an adaptation, I suppose, where you're you're using your own source material, and then you kind of go, okay, well, yeah, but we know that character wouldn't behave like X, right? Yeah.
It's not even adaptation suggests some changes, but in this case, I would say that it's a literal continuation, because if I think about the cops in the RCM, then the people who didn't exist, Jean McMair didn't exist in tabletop. Jean McMair was made specifically for Disco. Then there are a couple of cops who are not mentioned in Disco. There's Burzelius, Colin Bengt, Rudolf Quigley, Kit Mimosa, a bunch of cops who were going to be in the sequel. Someone else important that I'm forgetting right now. Oh, Trant Tidelstam is also not. He wasn't around in the tabletop. Everybody else were, and so because I know later that you're gonna ask me who is my favorite character, so I'm gonna save this one for a little bit down the line. But one of them is also from this tabletop.
Thank you very much. I'm already the happiest Disco Elysium fan in the world from what you've answered already. So and we haven't even finished this section, Argo. This is, so we weren't lying when we said that this would be a big one. Now this question is a big one. Martin gave his account of the Pale. I'm curious, when did the idea of the Pale first form? You touched a little bit on your view on its purpose, its existence. What does it mean? Just give us what does the Pale mean? What is it to you, and how do you understand it to have a purpose in the world?
Well, that's a tricky question to answer in a satisfying way. Like, okay, I'm gonna give you an answer of how I see it, and I think, okay, okay. Like, here's the thing with the world of Elysium. The world of Elysium is a fictional world, but the fictional world that is aware that it is fictional. And in a way, like, I'm simplifying, of course, but in a way, you could think of Pale as what happens when a reader puts down the book and puts the book away. Like, when whatever you read, when you're reading, you read it, the characters are vivid. Now you put it away, you move on in your life. They keep existing in your head. The world keeps existing. But how long does it take when you think back and the characters start melding into each other a little bit? Some characters start fading from your memory. Oh, I didn't remember there was that guy or that girl there. And in the same way, in Sacred and Terrible Air, I don't know how far you got.
Don't worry about spoiling it. I know basically what happens. I'm reading it purely as but I've not got very far.
I don't think that's a big spoiler. There's the model of the Harnoncourt, the aerostatic, and Apartsumyan, who sells it to sells it to Khan, Inayat Khan. He tells Khan that you need to spend time with it. You need to sort of mentally acknowledge it, and also how the Jesper, Khan, and Therese with this little, what is it called? I think you tie your hair with the hairband. How they smell the hairband, and suddenly with terror realize that the scent is gone. Like this is in the same way. As long as you remember, then it exists. Like when no one remembers it anymore, it stops existing. So in a way, yes. Like the simple answer for me would be that it is kind of like an acknowledgement to the fictional nature of Elysium and the writer's relationship to its creation and the reader's relationship to it.
That is the most incredible description of the Pale I've ever heard, because I don't think anybody has ever thought about it that way mistakenly. Everyone always says it's climate change, right? It's a metaphor for climate change.
It is not a metaphor for climate change.
So wow, amazing. That's honestly like that's going.
But I do also need to say I in no way want to take credit for this. Like this is how Robert explained to me. This is his big brain that came up with this. I am merely retelling.
It's quite nice that people interpret, and this is what I do love about Disco Elysium and the world that you guys built, right? And there's a lot of stuff on this later on, so we won't go too far. But I love how open everything is in Disco. Something as unique and quite clearly, in some regard, defined as the Pale has ended up being a talking point for so many people over so long now, and everybody has had their various interpretations, which I like, actually, and I think there's really good debate around it. So yeah, like as someone who is part of that creative team, how does that make you feel that people have come away and looked at something like the Pale and feel that it is as important as a metaphor for climate change, and various other interpretations?
Honestly, like I have ever since Disco released and I started reading fan theories in the internet. This really revigorated my belief in humankind's intellect, because there is so many little things. First of all, that you wouldn't ever hope people to actually figure out. So, some of them are like even I don't know. For me, maybe it wasn't such a big thing for everybody else, but for me, the fact that people figured out that Disco Elysium means introducing Elysium as like this is the prologue, the first chapter. You're gonna get so much more Elysium now. This is such a huge thing, and with so many theories, you read them and you think, man, yeah, that's the cooler way. And this is also like a big benefit of this. A little bit of like an open-ended writing that things can click into place. And later, when we maybe talk a little bit about methodology of this open-ended writing, yeah, folks, I lost my train of thought there. There was something about this. Maybe I'll remember it. But
pop back in. Yeah,
I don't agree that in my head, in my version of the world, it is not a metaphor for climate change, but the fact that some people it is like I respect that. Like that's wonderful. Also, yes, no, I remember. What I also wanted to say was that the explanation that I gave you was from third person perspective, zoomed out to the degree where it's kind of from behind the fourth wall, from looking from the inside of the world of Elysium, from any of its inhabitants. This kind of fictional world ceasing to exist, this concept or this notion would be kind of impossible to comprehend. So all of this, I don't even know. Cosmic horror is not the right word, but in philosophy there's a term, horror vacui, the fear of emptiness. I think Emil Mihai Siran is the person responsible for that. Like this. What Pale is to the inhabitants, where even inside Pale you have these the different weather, and you have these super deeps and all this stuff. So basically, no matter what this end result is, this kind of erasure of something to a point where it has never existed, the way it goes down from inside, looking inside, it does not diminish its horror in my eyes at all. And also, whenever I've had to explain to new writers, for example, like what is Pale, and quite often, especially when interviewing new writers and kind of talking like what would you like to write about in Elysium, Pale immediately comes up as the first thing. Then to kind of get it across that what is the relationship of Pale to an average inhabitant of the world, then the parallel we use is cosmos, because to you and me, we know it's out there, but it doesn't actually affect our daily lives very, very much. Like if there was an asteroid heading towards us, of course that's a different thing, but it is kind of and you probably noticed that in the world of Elysium, we've very, very much kept away from astronomy.
Yeah.
So this Pale, in a way, takes place of where cosmos would be.
Okay. Yeah. Like that's the big science thing, right?
Yeah.
Is the Pale? Yeah. Very, very interesting stuff, Argo. Appreciate that. That's Jamrock Hobart will be happy, because he's been banging on about how it's a climate change metaphor for a while now. It wouldn't be the first time that you called him out on calling something law, true to law.
I mean, like that's the thing. Like I said, I am very happy that people find like new meanings of concepts that resonate with them. But to me personally, whenever I've written Elysium, thought about Elysium, one of the first goals is to stay away anything that rings like real life, like that there's always needs to be some distance between the actual everyday of me, Argo Tuulik, and the world of Elysium. Like, for example, that's the reason why we don't have screens in Elysium, why we don't have mobile phones, why certain words like weed and dude, you'll never find them in Elysium unless someone has made a mistake, because it immediately kind of brings you back into this kind of dull actual reality. And for me, the words climate change, it also has a little bit of that suddenly I remember that I have bills to pay, and maybe I should go to colonoscopy, like this kind of, like I go to these different worlds to forget to be in a different place.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Nothing but respect to Jamrock Hobart.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm only poking him, to be honest. I think he's absolutely fantastic. So I just going to touch on something you've said there. Robert did a conference recently, or I can't remember if it was the interview he did at the university or the conference that he did, but in one of them he'd mentioned that he didn't like the word escapism, because I can't remember exactly what the context is now, but do you have any kind of, like, do you like the idea of escaping into worlds, or do you view it in a different way when you dive into a world like that?
It's a very interesting question, because honestly, like, I only consciously think about it when I'm torn out of it. I don't think of it going in, that man, I really need to escape from something. And in general, when I have actual hardships in my life that I need to escape from, then I'm quite unable to play games, read books. I usually just need physical activity, exercise, just endless walks, this kind of stuff. So I don't consciously, honestly, like, I guess this walks, that's also a form of escapism. It's a difficult question. I don't unfortunately have a straight answer.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Argo, I've come up with it on the fly, and I didn't know the exact context, so I butchered the question a little bit, to be honest. But I guess, to your point, he's kind of alluding to a similar thing, I would guess, in that calling it escapism suggests that you are using it to run away from the problem, whereas most people wouldn't necessarily do games. And I know what you mean. Like, if I've got something going on in my life, if I try and play a game to forget about it, it ruins my game experience, because really all I'm actually still thinking about is the problem, right? Because it's very rare that you get, like, gaming's very casual thing, that you can do it fairly relaxed. You could, like, pause and you can just take yourself back out of the world at any point to the problem, right? So yeah, I guess it doesn't always work as escapism.
You know what? When I think about it a little bit, it might also be, and this is me speculating, that using the word escapism like this might be kind of diminishing the value of what you're escaping into a little bit. If like, saying that one is the real world and the other one is like a pocket plane, like a pocket dimension. Because I think something that me and Robert and Luix definitely share is this almost like subconscious belief. I don't know, maybe, yeah. I guess belief is not the right word. What is the right word? Like, but basically, the worlds and characters are never. We don't think of them as characters. We think of them as real people. Like, I've literally had differences of opinion in my career with people over this fact, where someone says that, come on, in the end of the day, they are video game characters, and I can't keep silent, and I have to say, but no, see, they aren't. And if you think that they are, then this already goes in a very wrong direction. Like, to you, at least, they need to be as real as living, breathing people. Otherwise, you can't put that spark in there.
100%. Yeah. All of the best characters were inspired or have some relation to things that are real, right? And people feel are real. And I completely agree with you there.
Also, as kind of the benefits of this approach is that once a character comes alive in your head, it becomes like a relationship with them. And for me, always this mental checkpoint where I feel that, okay, we're there, is when you need a character to do something and they resist you. You know this dialogue needs to end there. The sequence of events needs to happen, and you understand that this character can't do this. It's illogical. It's just, it would be like breaking character. And now you have to find creative ways in a similar like we talked earlier. But Last of Us, you need to kind of game your way around it, or kind of fool your character into doing what you needed them to do, because you can't brute force them anymore, because they're no longer a character.
Yeah. No, it's good philosophy. I like it. Was there, so like, I guess like most people, sessions would vary in time and frequency and all the rest of it. But did you generally have like an overarching plot that maybe ran through? You talked a little bit about Robert always having like a story in mind and a direction. So did he always have like an overarching plot where, whether it was 5 sessions or 10 sessions, however long it took, that generally it was going to follow a certain narrative? Was that kind of how it went down?
Yes, I would say yes. Like it's one of those things that I never thought to ask it, but it always felt to me that Robert very much knew where things are heading, and very confidently was guiding players in that direction.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say that there was always an overarching plot. Yes.
Was there anything like so? I mean, there is a clear main plot for Disco Elysium, for example, but it has so many subplots in it. Is there a plot or story of any kind of fondness for you? Like was there a story in those D&D days that kind of sticks out as a really fun one or interesting one, or it was really good?
Yeah, honestly, there was again. Now we're talking about characters who are mentioned in Disco, but don't feature in Disco. Chad Tilbrook and Emil Mullins. There was I think we called some, at least couple of gaming sessions. I literally we called them the Ballad of Chad Tilbrook and Emil Mullins. When you think about Chad Tilbrook and Emil Mullins, think about the Kashmir song Rocket Brothers. Like this was literally, this was on the soundtrack every time Mullins and Tilbrook came into picture. And Mullins and Tilbrook were these real rookies. One was 18, I think Chad Tilbrook was 18, Mullins was 17. Literally out of Scop school, these real eager young guys who really wanted to be cops and be useful. Like their story, and I hit this barrier of the sequel where I can I don't want to spoil things that might one day still be possible to actually tell all the stories, but both the Ballad of Emil Mullins and Chad Tilbrooks, that's definitely one of these stories. With the cops, honestly, I know one of your later questions is about Price, Ptolemaeus Price and Nick Gottlieb, like that. That is one of these stories that I still think about every couple of weeks, and they get a little bit of a shivers. Honestly, there's a lot of these stories, but not many of them predating Torson and McLain. Like I would say that Torson and McLain was the first really serious grown up sort of cycle.
Yeah.
Like before that, yes, we had the campaigns we had before that were already Elysium as we knew it pretty much, but even kind of in their themes, they were smaller, less ambitious.
Yeah. Amazing. Honestly, amazing. Where did I get up to here? So the benefit of us jumping around so much is I can see that we've kind of touched on a few things. So we've got, okay. Can you remember why Harry and Kim replaced Torson McLain? So in the art book, and there is obviously a famous letter, a pitch letter, I think by Robert. And it was always, from what I understand, originally going to be a Torson McLain game, at least in its infancy. Can you remember when that changed to Harry and Kim, and why?
Honestly, like for me, there's a 5-year gap, like maybe even more between when we played our last Torson and McLain game, which was maybe 2007, I think probably, and 2016 when I joined now the Zaum in its studio incarnation. I feel like I know that there was. I still remember the in between there. These times when Luis and Robert were telling me about. Well, basically, maybe you remember this. This is
I do. Yeah.
You can see that only one of them here is Harry. Like the Disco
Disgrace to the
Elysium
uniform, is it? Or is that
Disgrace
what?
to the uniform, yes.
Yeah.
No Truth to the with the Furies was a very different game back then, because essentially this is your fighter, mage, rogue, ranger class selection, and I'm guessing that Torson and McLain would have been some of the other class options then, but like. As what becomes quickly obvious as when you try to write a game with this level of detail and personality towards the main character is that in this case you're looking at 6 different games, because each of these is completely different. And from my perspective, honestly, where after this 5-year hiatus. I don't know, even hiatus. I got married in 2007, and honestly did other stuff in life, studied mechanics and worked on cars. So I don't know what happened in between there, but I was quite surprised when Robert finally came and asked me to join. How many of these characters were already not implemented, but were already like included. Torson McLain, Bruzelius Bengt, like an early version of Kuno, like this kind of stuff, like idea of Kuno. So I don't know the exact reasons, but I can speculate in a way that Torson and McLain are fantastic characters to play in a tabletop in person. Like they are kind of fun, goofy. You can get a little bit of action in. But they're not great for a video game protagonist. Also, there is a reason why the amnesiac trope is so popular. It's just amazing in order to get the player and the protagonist on the same page in discovering the world, and it just wouldn't have worked very well with Torson and McLain.
No, that makes
Robert,
sense actually.
Person to ask about Harry. Like I know a lot of Harry, especially the cop parts of Harry, came from Kaur, because his dad was a murder investigator in the Russian Soviet militia.
Oh wow, okay.
But yeah, let me quickly talk about Kim as well. Funny thing with Kim is that it's one of these you can't see the forest behind the trees situations, that while writing Kim, like I, for example, would have never expected Kim to become such a popular character, because Kim, to a great degree, Kim was a way for us to reassure the player that don't worry, even though you're playing a total failure of a human being, it's all right. Someone has your back, because like on a subconscious level, you need this reassurance that after you fail check after check, or even the checks you succeed, they still don't mean that you succeed in the game often. That you need some sort of subconscious reassurance that things are going to be okay. So Kim is there functionally very much for that. To first of all tell you that it's okay. It's okay to throw up next to the corpse. Don't worry, you're not going to actually become a massive racist by internalizing the advanced race theory. Don't worry, we can go back and talk tomorrow to that guy. Like all these little things that us the developers need the player to know. And I don't know how many people have played a no Kim pass, but there is a no Kim version of the world as well. And in these situations, we kind of had to use skills to do the same thing, and it just doesn't work the same well as well.
So you mentioned again, this is all just amazing stuff. You mentioned skills there. Obviously, a very famous part of the game. I can't remember. I'm sure Robert had mentioned somewhere that skills were voices for skills, or parts of your brain were present in the D&D days. Can you remember any of that? Is that right?
No, honestly, this is I don't know where this misconception has come, but I know they were not voices for skills is an idea that comes from Jaago Pirve, our at one point lead developer, systems designer, namesake for the racing driver Jacob Irv.
Yes, of course, yes.
Great guy. Honestly, like if you want to interview someone who was there in the very early days, and he was there even before me. He was literally part of the very first wave. Talk to Jaago Pirve. Like he is the man behind skills, having voices.
You need to DM me the correct spelling or link me somewhere, and I will. Thank you. So between the board game and the video game, there was Robert's book. What can you recall about that time and that idea coming about, Argo?
Well, first of all, Robert was writing stuff even before the book, like little short stories, introductory chapters to what seemed to build towards something larger, but not really in the world of Elysium. Although, like remember earlier when I mentioned the spell description, spell bubbles, like Robert wrote a huge amount of those as well. So kind of we all knew that Robert is a writer way before anyone else of us. I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly this point where now Robert starts writing an Elysium novel. Like maybe he probably remembers. I know that it wasn't all written in one go. Like I think he started writing it while we were all still living with our mothers.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere. Oh fuck! I don't even know what the year might have been. 2005, maybe something like this. When Luiga's dad died and left him a house,
Mm-hmm.
and me, Robert, and Luiga, we all moved into this house, and somewhere at some point, I think we might have already been living there for a year or so. Then Robert picked up the writing again. At that point, I think he had 4 chapters written. And I remember, living in that house. I remember Robert sitting behind his computer in his room, writing. Those are my memories of this the period while it was being written. Of course, like most of Elysium development, there was all constantly talking about this stuff. Robert shared a lot of this stuff even while it was still in process.
Mm-hmm.
What I do remember is again iffy with actual dates. Might have been 2011, 2012. I'm not really sure. I remember Kaur and Robert pulling up at my apartment where me and my now ex-wife were living in Tallinn. Kaur still had his blue Ferrari 456 GT that he bought from Dolph Lundgren.
He bought it from Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah,
that's such a weird little link. Amazing.
But like in my head, I sometimes keep a list of kind of potential actors who could play Harry Dubois, and honestly, Dolph Lundgren is pretty high in that list. I'm not saying he's number one, but there is something about Dolph. Anyways, it was probably February, March, something like this. It was still very snowy, and it's not. Even in Estonia, you don't really see Ferraris in snow, so it was kind of like an unearthly sight. And yet they came by to drop off the script of Sacred and Terrible Air, and the plan was that everybody, well, in addition to myself, like 12, 14 people also received a copy of the script. And the idea was that everybody reads through the script, and then we gather in this group editing sessions, and we go through the book line by line, go through everybody's comments, suggestions, and kind of basically try as a group to make it as good as possible. And yeah, that's what happened.
A little bit like your tabletop stuff, right? There's a lot of talking about it, and you did exactly the same for the book, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like that was a useful process for Robert, generally speaking, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because it sounds like he has a mind full of ideas, and even when he was like solitary writing, he brought it to his friends and was kind of interested in what people thought of it, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I suspect that it was more of Kaur's idea to actually do it like this. But definitely a very, very, very effective way, and especially like no one in the world is good when they do their first thing. Like the first iteration of the first thing, it's always gonna be flawed. And kind of this is where you need most scrutiny. This is where you need mostly this honest critique. And I think largely because we went through these things, it is as good as it is. And to this day, like there are things that I really, really love about this book. Yeah, both as a writer and as a poet, Robert is definitely in my top, maybe even top 3, but definitely in top 5.
Well, that's some compliment. And I know that obviously I've spoke to you and Dora quite a bit, and you both say similar things about his ability to write. So it's not, the fandom will feel vindicated because they are always celebrating this fact. So we know that pretty much all of the people and stuff that was in the game was pretty much transported from Tabletop. Was it the same with the book?
It's a good. That's a good question. Good question. Like I would say no. Like obviously, what was not only transported, but I would say that polished and kind of evolved was the concept of pale. Like exactly what I described. Like what the pale is from looking from the inside. Like we never had this kind of vivid or this detailed descriptions or even any sort of like analysis of it before. And I think like Robert also, even in his head, to get to these points, he needed to write it out. So in that sense, the concept of pale is definitely from there. This is something maybe Robert doesn't agree with me, but I think like there is this never actually dismissed concept from the old versions of Elysium and old versions of Elysium, not Evermere, of these entities. We called them demons. But here's the thing: the word demon or demon in Estonian, in Estonian, it has a very different connotation. Not very different, but the connotations are not a giant red guy with wings and forked tail. Like that's not that. It's closer to this kind of primordial evil. And I do feel that there were traces of this old demon concepts in some of the characters there. But overall, I don't think Robert lifted a lot from the tabletop.
Interesting. Okay. What about real life? I have been informed that at least one character in the book is based on you.
Yeah, I mean, the personalities of the main characters are all based on us. Like Inayat Khan is based on me. Chester de la Gardie is based on Kaspar, the fourth guy credited for Elysium world building. Therese Maciek is a kind of a fusion of Robert and Luiga, and I think Sigismund Berg is Robert himself. Like that's my read of this.
Yeah.
Other than the personas, not, like I would say that there's a lot of inside jokes. Like for example, I don't even know how does it translate into how was it translated into English? But there is a character in Estonia. It's Estonian. It's called Ise Chillia. How would even I translate it to English? Self-relaxer, auto chiller, something like that. This Ulv is the character name in the book.
Yep.
This comes from a inside joke Luiga and I had from the time I was working in a night shift in a logistics terminal, DPD logistics terminal. And there's so many little jokes and even words are used. But this is something I would say is characteristic to all of Elysium. Like we already talked about the musical influences a little bit, very little bit about the literary influences, but kind of in a way, I feel that the magic of Elysium and why it has been always so vibrant and why it comes off so vibrant is that it is this shameless amalgamation of all these experiences. Like people kind of in some ways, I don't know what is the reason for this, but people felt comfortable bringing those things on the table. Like in general, I don't know, like I other Dungeons and Dragons sessions I've played, you don't really see someone taking things directly from Metallica, for example, or something like this. But somehow the way Elysium's nature has always been to be kind of like a reflection of, or like reflection is also not the right word, but like a
more like a reflection in a lake, maybe. Like
of the reflection,
rather than a mirror. You know, when you see your reflection in a lake.
Yes, reflection in the lake. That's a very good way of putting it. Even like all the names are taken from the real world, and they are deliberately mundane, for example.
Yeah.
And in the same way, because it feels such a realistic reflection, I think that's why it feels so natural to contribute all these things that you've accumulated in life during life in you.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. Do you still have a copy of the original book?
Unfortunately, I don't. I gave it to girls.
Well, see,
because I read it every day.
Well, there can't be many, right? There can't. I know that Robert
my mom has a copy, so I have access to one. But
yeah. I know that Robert had one in his hand when he spoke at the university. I'm assuming it's the one that is in Tallinn. I'm guessing. I remember he had one in his hand, so I don't know whether that was his copy or what. But yeah, I was just interested because you know that the translation was done by several groups have done it, but is it Ibex? I think is it Ibex or Ibex? I can't remember how you pronounce it, but I know that they had a really tough time even sourcing a copy to do the translation and stuff. And then Estonian is a strange language, right? I think the translation had to go English to Russian, Estonian to Russian, then English, or they did it some weird way like that because they were having difficulty getting it straight across. Yeah, and I think it's quite funny that even you a moment ago was trying to think of how to get your mother tongue into my mother tongue some way. Yeah. I do find it. I find language a really, really fascinating thing. Actually, when you think about like one day someone had to figure out how to say the color red across every single human being on Earth, and everybody it was in agreement that yes, red was this thing. Honestly, I don't know how we pulled it off, but we did.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, it kind of, if you start thinking about it, then somewhere, if you go far enough back, it kind of seems to boil down to some some form of intuition, or this kind of like it just know that it invokes the same cerebral reaction in everyone, and when you name it a variation.
Yeah, I mean, what does a dog's bark mean, right? And that's where we all essentially spawn from some very primitive version of ourselves, and we were fortunate enough to develop this ridiculous brain. Well, maybe we're unfortunate developing this brain. That's up for debate, but basically there is communication of some description which has existed for all of time, and now we came along and went, well, we're going to have loads of it. We're going to have all of these different variations, but we've done well. We got as far as we have, and now we can write stuff that's beautiful and makes us feel stuff in any language you want. So
I absolutely love this language plays, etymology plays, and Luiga is a very similar mind, and even Kuno S, the character of Kuno S. I'm not sure if she would ever exist if it wasn't preceded by this play on language. Like the Estonian language doesn't have grammatical genders, but there are like these special forms of words that we can use when we want to emphasize that something is feminine. For example, dancer. Dancer in Estonian, tantsija, no indication of gender. But if you want to emphasize that it's female, then tantsija becomes tantsijatar. In the same way, before there was Kuno S, there was Kunotar, and this was Luiga's brainchild. Kind of Kuno itself was such a funny name. Original Kuno is spelled with a K. Such a funny name, and when sometimes you keep repeating a name or a phrase in your head till it becomes like nonsense, like complete nonsense, and then after a few more rotations, it comes out as something else. And through this kind of process, Luiga once threw on the table Kunotar, and that's how concept of Kuno S was born.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I love thinking about stuff like that. It's it fascinates me. So just one more, because I haven't finished the book and I don't feel like I'm in a position to ask too much about story stuff. And really, the Sacred Entail layer, I just wanted to understand. It's a good transition topic, right? And just so as a segue, I'm very interested in how you guys, as a collective, as an individuals, you've gone from a bunch of kids wearing overcoats, creating this identity, smoking as cheaply as possible in cafes, and then Robert releases a book. You've now got a friend who's got a full-on book out. It's like, you're well aware that you've made this story. You know how complicated your systems are, and you've got a good idea of how advanced they are. How was that journey? Just as like life, Argo. It seems I didn't do any of this creative stuff until I was 34 last year, and you guys have lived and breathed it. I'm just really fascinated to know what that journey has been like for you, going from zero to, on the precipice of going, this could be a game.
I guess, in a way, it has always been in the background, and probably, I think probably Robert's experience is different, at least in key points, but the idea that this could be anything more than now we need to go back to escapism for a little bit, because I think up to the roughly point when Robert started writing Sacred and Terrible Lair, and probably even during it, and maybe after, I think even in his head, it was Elysium was just the place to be when you need rest from the rest of the world. And like so many of these conversations about Elysium happened making bus rounds. Bus rounds is you pretend that you're going to school. Me and Robert will both wake up at my mom's place. Bye, Mom. We've already lied that the gym class is cancelled today, so we don't have to get up at 7. So at 9 we exit, we go get on a bus. And now there's like an hour and a half circle that the bus does before dropping us off exactly where we left off. And by that time, my mom's hopefully has left. So so many of these Elysium conversations happen during these bus rounds or walks to the kiosk that sells single cigarettes for one crown. These, like in a way, I guess it is escapism if I think about it like that. And of course, somewhere around the time when this great era of isometric RPGs came about, or at least when we were able to bootleg them in Estonia, like 98, 99, 2000. Of course, we talked about imagine if we could make a game, imagine if we could make a movie, but it seemed like way unrealistic, like going to Mars right now or something like this. Like not in a million years did we think that it's actually possible. I think probably once Robert had published his book, it became a little more realistic, because we all knew that it's a fucking banger of a book. Like our the most prolific Estonian author of the last 15, 20 years was endorsing it super hard. Like at that point, Robert must have felt that maybe it is possible to actually make a living out of it. But I'm sure you've heard that it was remarkably unpopular in Estonia. I think only 2 or 3 reviews were written out of the 5,000 copies. I think 3,000 had to be destroyed because they were taking up warehouse space, and Kaur had to pay for the warehouse to keep them there. By the way, 5,000 copies, 3,000 destroyed. I'm not sure if these are the correct numbers. These are what I remember from the top of my head. I think in the end it only sold like 25,000 copies or something like that.
Yeah.
So at that point, it must have started to feel again like, no, it's not possible. Like very much in Estonia, it never ever felt like it's possible to be part of creating culture and actually live like a dignified life. And from what I hear to this day, like if you want to be a writer or an artist in Estonia, well, you better get used to eating turbo noodles, and it's not a dignified life.
Yeah.
So
wow. And that is quite a journey, isn't it? Because, like you say, to kind of go to the heights of having like a really respected author like championing it and saying, you know, this is, and then to kind of have that not materialize, it must have been quite a hard thing. But these are the kinds of things that I think, honestly, and every single one of us have had experiences like this in our life. These hurdles, that's all they are. We're still going to make it down the end of the track, right? But we just haven't quite made the jump on this one. And it means that whatever mistake we made with that hurdle, we won't make it again. And we will avoid, you know, the pitfalls, hopefully. And things always work out. I really do believe that. I think life has a very, very strange way of carving out exactly what's supposed to happen. So
I really agree with it, but it is one of those things that it needs an input from your end, and this
absolutely.
is why like I know later you mentioned Timo Albert. From Timo, I kind of not that long ago, I got a reminder of how important it is to burn the boats. Like when you get to the shore, burn the boats so you don't have any other option than to succeed. Because if you hide one in the bushes, then it's guaranteed that you fail. And this is kind of the way I think it happens, is that when you're out of options, then life will carve you this path forward. But as long as you have this one boat in the bushes, it's kind of like you're on the fence. You haven't sent out the signal that that's what I want to do. And like in an environment like in Estonia, to make that leap, of faith, like it was pretty. It was a scary thing. Like I remember, I was still married when I told my wife that I'm quitting my job. I was working at the BMW junkyard at the time. I'm quitting my junkyard job. I'm gonna start making video games. I mean, she was extremely supportive, but I saw she was scared, and I was scared as well. And I already joined like an enterprise of, I think there was, well, Jaago Pirve was there, Robert was there, a few other people, like 9 people, I think, had been doing this for 9 months, or maybe even a little bit more. So I can't even imagine how scary it was for them to start it. And also, when us, the remnants of the Overcoats, joined, we didn't really have anything to our name, like only that. Kaur, I think, was the only person who actually had who was taking financial risks. Like I know he's in interviews as well. He sold his Bentley, he sold Dolph Lundgren's Ferrari, he sold his apartment. He put everything on the line that this will work out, that this ragtag group of people who've never made a video game, that they will somehow, in a country that has never produced a video game that has at least been received any mainstream attention, that somehow it's gonna work out. And
I mean, it's,
what do you know?
It's quite something, isn't it? It is, and this is, to your point, and to stick with the theme that we kind of talked about. It feels like Disco Elysium was meant to happen because of all of the circumstances, and absolutely, you need people driving. And I am remiss. I shouldn't have missed that off. You can't expect fate to do all the work for you. Absolutely not. But the odds were so like steeply stacked against Disco Elysium. It should, like, by all conventional laws, should never have got off the ground. And it's amazing that we sit here today, and Disco is what it is. I'll talk more.
That's something I often think about, that as spectacular and unlikely as was its rise, in some ways it's equivalent. Its fall is equivalent. Like
yeah.
Would it have ever gotten this bad if it wasn't so meteorical? The rise.
Yeah, it's funny. It's now returned to the state of maybe it will never happen. Right? It's funny how the world kind of flips everything around.
Oh man, I got a good feeling about this. Like, I got a better feeling about this than a long time.
Good. That's good. We'll touch on more of that in a second. So we haven't even got to Disco Elysium yet, and we are 2 hours in, and that's how good this is going to be. The next bit, we talked a little bit how Kaur's Kaur, is it Kaur? It's pronounced Kaur, is it?
Oh, damn.
I'm not going to attempt to do it full Estonian like you just did. It's Kaur, and I'm going to have to settle on that, Argo. Otherwise, I'm going to end up butchering someone's name. So you decide to make a game, right? You make the very brave decision of informing your then wife of your plans. I can imagine how it would have gone down in this house. And the team, as you say, was already kind of formed at that point. Do you? Let's ask a different question. So I had a couple that we've kind of already covered. My question is this: can you remember your first day walking into, I don't know, an office, if it even was that, or the first weeks? Like, what was that starting point like for you?
Okay, I'll drop a little bit of a timeline here. I think in the summer of 2015, I hang out with Luiga and Robert in a cemetery in Tallinn district of Nõmme. We talk about the cop archetypes, this stuff here, the gym teacher as the funniest archetype. Then I think next time is May 2016. me and Robert officially sit down, and he officially invites me into the team. But as they are currently in the process of acquiring investment, it's not yet clear when it's actually going to materialize. Jumping to the autumn, October, yes. In the beginning of October, I'm in the BMW junkyard. I'm actually getting my C category truck license because I'm supposed to start bringing BMWs from United Kingdom on trailer to Estonia. Really, really glorious perspective for the future. And Lemps, our producer, calls me, hey, like, do you want to come work on No Truce with the Furies? Like, it's a no-brainer, obviously. I have to give my 1 month notice, but first of all, I'm going to go down to the Müürivahe office. That was the hippie squat. We can talk about that a little bit later as well, to see what they've been up to so far. The office is already, it's up and running. It's very much the charming office that it will be for the coming years. And I don't mean charming in any way, in any ironic way. All of its flaws, I think they are very much part of its charm. It is kind of run down. It's a wonderful location, really, in the very center of the city. But the building is borderline soon to be demolished. We share it, yes, with 3, 4 hippies, wonderful people. It comes with its own improvised gym. It has leaky floors. Sometimes water gets into the server room. It's got a whole lot of character. But the tables are already up. You can see people are working, and it was kind of like this. How do you call it? Change of guard, turn of an era. My interpretation is that the investment had arrived. Now they were ready to. This group of 9 to 12 people were ready to expand, bring on more people. So me, Helen, and Martin, we all joined at the same time. We all basically came to the office to see what they've been up to at the same time. Martin Luiga had tragically just I don't even know what the word is. Fired is not the word. Luiks and Robert, they I don't know. They had a misunderstanding, which culminated in Luiks not coming to work anymore, and eventually they had to terminate his contract and send Lemps as an enforcer to knock on his door to get his laptop back, which he didn't get back, which I'm very, very happy about. Anyways, I didn't get to work with Luiks in person, unfortunately. He was just
okay.
Three of us came in. But the thing that they invited us all to see, it was a build, very first build. It had whirling, the top floor of whirling. It had the inside of the whirling, and I think the build ends when you exit. But Kim is already there. The sleeping dog worker is already there. Garte is there, and Glasia is there, and of course the I want to have fuck with you joke is already there. Mm-hmm. And more importantly than any of those elements, there's this placeholder tune that they used from British Sea Power. It's called Incredible Driving Feat, I think. Is it incredible? I think Incredible Driving.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the songs.
And it starts playing when Harry gets downstairs, and it already has the camera pan to Kim. And that moment, and with this track, this was like brain exploding. This unbelievable, like, my friends have made this, like, and already in this incredibly raw stage, it blew all the Baldur's Gates, early Fallout games, Arcanum, all this stuff out of the water. And in a sense that this felt like it's something completely different, like completely different in terms of like seriousness and narrative quality. Like also to this day, whenever I need to do serious writing, I put Incredible Driving Feet on in the background, because more than even any of the Sea Power songs that made it to the soundtrack, this to me encapsulates this grandioseness and dignity and beauty of Elysium, and this underlying optimism that's so out of place in a way in a pre-apocalyptic world. Like it's such an incredible song. I think there was some sort of a copyright issue why we couldn't actually use it, and replacement is wonderful as well. But this one moment I will always remember. And
it's quite nice.
And I have to say,
go on, carry on. Sorry.
And I have to say that there was all like so much of it was held together by chewing gum and duct tape, like these mock-up menus where yes, inventory comes up, but it's actually just a screenshot. I think there were weird skills that didn't end up in the game, like convalescence under motorics, and a lot of stuff was either just like a representation or like a straight up was that word mock-up. But you could feel this confidence of game design behind it. Like even in this stage, it's I think back to it in admiration of how they were able to achieve this level of quality.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. So when you first came in, what were you hired as? What was the position it was of? Were you like always a writer? Were you always, but like, I guess indie game development of this type, how I imagine it is, you can't really afford to always have people stuck in a box. There has to be, all hands to the pump at different times, and so what was your official role, and was there any other stuff that you did outside of writing?
Yeah, like I'm so glad you asked, because this is something I've thought so much about. Well, first of all of us, Martin, me and Helen, we were all hired as writers, and the thing is that this is, I think, where the fact that none of us had ever made a game, like Robert, no one had ever made a game, really was a huge boon. Like really worked in our favor, because we had no idea of what are the sort of roles, like standard roles in the gaming industry. Like it was only like a year ago when I realized that in the gaming industry, writer and narrative designer are usually two different positions. Like we neither had the terminology for these things or this artificial separation between roles. In ways, everyone was a generalist within the framework of their skill set. That also meant that when firewood was brought in, everybody rolled up their sleeves and carried firewood in. But because of this lack of experience, in combination with the fact that the lead writer and the lead designer, Robert, was also very much at the position of power, or like in a position where he was able to make decisions and enforce creative decisions. We ended up basically in an order of work what can be best described as every writer director of a scene. And I have now understood what a privilege it was and how quintessential it was in us achieving this consistency and quality of writing. And what I mean by this is that essentially how we worked was that when a writer was assigned a character, or I think better description is a scene, because often it was more than one character. In my case, like Hardy Boys, Renan and Gaston. Then, in addition to writing the scene, or sort of moving on from writing the scene, you very naturally do all the adjacent things. Like let me think. For example, okay, I'll try to use Renan and Gaston as an example. Renan and Gaston, first of all, you write the characters. Then you write all the relevant items, like Renan's uniform, medal, Gaston's silly sandwich, Kim's handkerchief, whatever stuff is happening there. Then relevant animations. Harry needs to throw the shot put ball. This is, and I don't have enough praise for Eduardo Rubio, our unbelievably talented animator. Basically, the writer and the animator together, they figure out the sequence of how it goes. Not only sort of first storyboarding it, or like storyboarding. I mean, quite often it literally meant physically reacting to get it across. Then once Eduardo makes a pass, then you need to basically rewrite the whole thing, because it's never, you can never anticipate how the writing and the animation are actually going to be syncing until it's done. Then you realize, because I mean, there's an obvious rule: don't double. When you're showing something, don't describe what you're showing. That's stupid. But to notice these things, I don't know, maybe like with experience, of course, you get better, but I've never ever gotten to a place where I don't need to rewrite it once I see the animations, and then sync it up with everything. Then same with portraits. Like Ryder sits down with Rostov, we talk through kind of the character, what personality wise, appearance wise. This relates to character model as well. Then when time finally came, when the final cut dropped to choose voice actors, it was the writer responsible for the character who eventually made the call. Like this is the voice that I hear in my head. Of course, it's also the programming. Like we use the word booleaning from the, you know what boolean means.
No, go on.
It comes from the mathematician John Boole. Basically, it's Irva is really gonna hate me for butchering it, but I think that's how it is. That Boolean is something that can either be true or false, and kind of when something can be either true or false, then you can build these chains that kind of react accordingly. For example, Harry is wearing both shoes, true or false? False.
Got you.
Next one. Harry is only wearing right shoe, true or false? Now already you have a fork, like, and according to this fork, you can create this micro reactivity. This type of.
And by the way, I just wanted to say, sorry, I know I've interrupted you there, but I just want to very quickly say, whoever had that job has arguably had the hardest job of any game developer ever, because the branching paths in this are insane. Like,
but here's the thing: you would think that.
Okay.
I came from a BMW junkyard. I don't know any programming, and I was super scared. But it's incredibly simple and intuitive. I picked it up in a month. Like I think everybody picked it up in a month. I probably took the longest. And what happens? And this is where I also need to praise the writing software we used, Artisim. I don't know if you know what Artisim is. But,
I'm aware of. I've dug into some of the tools that you guys have used for, like, when I've tried to replicate it in videos and stuff. So I'm loosely aware of some of the things you used. Yeah, that does sound familiar.
Essentially, it's meant it's a tool for representing branching narratives visually. And now, in combination with this visual representation and the booleans, it becomes like the second language. And once you use it enough, then you start noticing these little tricks that you can do with it. And these little tricks, I think 80% of them player doesn't consciously notice, but their subconscious does notice. And if this programming was left to somebody else, if a third person comes in and I'll just program it later, it will not work out like this, because only the person writing it in this moment has this kind of cerebral connection with this, and also this kind of like this awareness of where microreactivity can come in relation to the other stuff they've written. Of course, once character has been written, I think we ended up like with this 10 stage checklist for the character to be fully done. Then once it's like in the 7th stage or something like this, then other writers will read through it, put in their reactivity, like, hey, in my dialogue, Harry, I don't know, says something like this. This should have a recognition here, or some reactivity. So the special boy who clicked on that option feels that the game is paying attention.
Yeah.
Then of course there's all the, when I say scene, that's why I say scene, that in addition to the characters, there's the orbs in the area, there's the barks on the relevant characters, and also following from that, it very naturally it creates a very natural kind of writing flow, and very, very natural, but also ultimately very fractured in a sense that for me, I moved from Rene and Coston to Kuno, then I wrote Kinema, then I went back to Kuno and did the Kuno Shack. From Kuno Shack, like you see, all these things are area-wise connected. I think there's the cloak jump, then it moves on to Rene's guard booth. There's a little party scene there. Then you go to Evrard. When I was supposed to start writing Evrard, and as I'm looking at the screenshot of Everard's container, I feel that there's something missing, and kind of to fill that void, I quickly made up a character, Easy Leo.
Of course, yeah. Container.
That Easy Leo. Like I think I've said this before, but Easy Leo was literally the easiest, no pun intended, character for me, because there were absolutely no stakes. He didn't need to do anything else. He just needed to be there, so the player has something to click on. But what I wanted to say with this fracture thing is that because you move in this. Like you move spatially, is that an expression? You move spatially, then it ends up that different writers don't overlap so much on certain parts. Like I've done some stuff in the Doom commercial area, but I barely know what's happening in the church. Like I did parks for the church characters, but I'm sure there are dialogues that I haven't even fully ever played. And I think vice versa. There are bits that I've written that probably other writers other than Robert never played.
Yeah. Interesting, very fascinating, because I think a lot of people don't realize that kind of side of the writing process. I think people kind of hear you or see, like, you list a bunch of characters, and I think most people imagine it is he just wrote all of the lines for that character and then handed it over to someone else and then they fill it. But you can't, nobody can work like that, right? You have to have all of the different parts. So there's like lots of, well, okay, yes, well, I'm very proud of this particular character because he's mostly mine, but there will be characters that people contribute, other people contribute to your characters and vice versa. And I think it's very important to highlight that this is not it's not Stardew Valley where Eric Barone literally crafted every single inch of one game. This is a huge collaborative effort, and it takes a game as big and as deep as this to be collaborative. And I think it's very important to highlight. And you explained it very well.
In various times, we've tried to sort of assign characters, and it's very hard to find like this one solid criteria. Like there are characters that someone started writing and someone else finished, like whose character it is then. Like in my head, and I think of this in this kind of a loose way of who gave the character a soul. Like it is correlating to the amount of words someone wrote as well. But like I for example, I don't want to take credit for the characters that I didn't start because that. Then in this case, I feel I edited, I improved stuff, but I didn't. The soul did not come from me.
Yeah,
the Peaks is a very good example of that. I did a pretty extensive rewrite 2 months before the launch, but I just improved on what someone else wrote, so the soul does not come from me, for example.
So, okay, next question. Was the final plot that we know today, the kind of main Disco Elysium story, the overarching, was that always the intended story at that stage, or had it kind of moved around a bit and changed quite a bit during development?
No, it wasn't. Kind of. There were bits that, well, when I say bits, I mostly mean the political dream quests that we didn't get to finish because we ran out of time for the 1000th time. So this bit, yes, so that was always the intended thing. I don't think anyone really thought about the voicing or all the 1.2 million words before Disco received the reception it received. This definitely came later. I'm trying to think what other stuff did we put in with the final cut. I don't think final, like, okay, yes, okay, I do remember, like, one of the biggest failures of game design that I would also attribute to just running out of time is this choke point in the end game that Final Cut tried to alleviate a little bit. But before the Final Cut, if you didn't invest any points in shivers, then I hope you roll well and please save scum a little bit, just in case. Like, that's just not good game design. That we did want to fix. There's probably little things like this, few more little things like this that we wanted to fix. To me, I would say that this final nail in the coffin has such bad connotations, but this final seal was stuff we put in with Easter eggs patch, like for example. Cornelius Kurdi's pinball. Like, I remember I had a lot of fun writing that stuff.
Oh, was that not in the original?
That was not in the original. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that after, actually, because when we talk about Kuno, I want to talk about Kim's time in the what's it called? The dealing with Julian. I can't remember the department of the RCM he talks about, but basically he was like embedded in dealing with juvenile delinquents.
Right? Yeah.
So before we do get to there, because that's very much Disco, I'm very interested in this next question. So Robert is on record as being a huge fan of Planescape Torment. It can't be the only CRPG around that time that influenced him or had a big, but that's the one that everyone comes back to and says, well, without Planescape Torment, there's no Disco Elysium, right? Did it have any influence on you? And were there any other kind of games or media influences that you personally drew from?
Yes. Okay. Let's take a little bit of a step back. Like, I think looking at the isometric CRPG genre and what games that influenced us at all in this era, like I think the things that stand out were the first two Fallout games. The first one more than the second one.
Yeah.
Especially in Robert's case, I know I played the second one before the first one, so I didn't have this disappointment of the mood change. Like, I can only imagine how it kind of lessens the experience if you come from this dark and gloomy Fallout 1 and then suddenly you have all those inside jokes. So I think I had a better experience with Fallout 2. I'm not trying not to exaggerate. I think I've played it like 45 times or something like that. It really was the defining game. It was actually the game that taught me or forced me to learn English, because well, you do need to understand what you're saying in the dialogues.
Yeah.
Then Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale. Those were Baldur's Gate 2 actually, especially with Robert and Luiga. Like, this was the game that I know had an enormous influence on both of them. And Robert is a huge fan of Icewind Dale. Mm-hmm. But Planescape Torment obviously on top of all of them. We played, me and him, we played it in parallel. We played it in the era where internet was still kind of a commodity. So piracy quite often meant that somebody gives you a disc. And a friend of Robert's from the Dragon.de forum, the role-playing forum in Estonia, gave us Planescape on, I think it was 4 discs or free discs or something like that. And somewhere in the middle, there was this catastrophe where the third disc wasn't reading, and Robert literally had to take money from his mom, pretending that he goes to the school that he had stopped going in Tartu, other big city in Tallinn. He went in the morning, came back in the evening with the new disc, and we kept playing.
Amazing.
It was an enormously influential game, and I think it was influential. First of all, because it demonstrated that the meat of the game doesn't have to be in combat. Like I think you would struggle to find anyone who plays Planescape Torment for its spectacular combat. It's really not that great.
Yeah.
But what it did was that it demonstrated that the dialogues can be dynamic. Like to this day, like to me, the best parts of Planescape Torment are these weird moments where you bite off your own finger, put like a rotten, frozen other old finger of yours, and then receive memories from it and stuff. Like it's just, it just demonstrated what is possible outside of combat. And also, I think what it did was it how do I say it? It took itself seriously in a way no other game we had played had taken itself seriously, like tackling what really, honestly, to this day, I feel like very, very big philosophical concepts. Like this core question of game Planescape Torment, what can change the nature of a man? And the answer, regret. I think about it so much, and I honestly think even on in a philosophical sense, Planescape really nailed it. Like none of its philosophy is embarrassing. Like it never feels like I don't know, like a drunken 17-year-old is trying to get girls by talking about Nietzsche or something like that. It's genuinely like it's approachable, genuinely deep. Like having replayed the Planescape few years ago, I have to say that in terms of like a structure, like a dialogue structure, they were still in the Iron Age. These notions that in dialogues you need to have like these dialogue hubs where the player can return, so subconsciously they feel safe. They don't feel lost in the dialogue. These didn't exist. Like some dialogues were randomly just some branch just they completely takes you out of the dialogue, so you have to go back and do the whole thing over again. Like a lot of these things where you look at it and you see like, this is the genesis. This is where it all began. Mm-hmm. None of it diminishes its value in my eyes. By the way, I still consider it like the top 3 game of all time.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm playing it. I only picked it up this year, mostly because obviously everyone in the Disco community and beyond has recommended it. And yeah,
it's spoilers. I'm sorry.
No, honestly, I've read that much about these games now, purely for research purposes, that they're not really spoilable for me anymore. The same goes with the Fallout. I'm interested. So you touched earlier on the influence of the Shield, which honestly really surprised me. I'd never made that connection. But now when I think back, yes, it's like some of the. I think it actually probably reflects more in the Hardys than anything, if I think about it. So there was the Shield, and go on, you can say it.
That is very interesting, because in the Hardys, I think there's least of that consciously, and something I will send you later if you're interested are the original photos that I used as a sort of like a compass to find the voices of the Hardy Boys, and I think you will find that they are very similar to what their in-game iterations ended up being. And major influences in this case is for Titus Hardy, the characters of London and MacLeod from John Steinbeck's In Dubious Battle, one of my favorite books of all time. These are the main prototypes for Titus Hardy. Glenn, do you remember in Die Hard, there's this blonde terrorist, Carl?
I literally, obviously it's Christmas, so I watched Die Hard recently. Yeah.
That's
I know who you're on about. Oh, of course. Amazing.
Angus is Chris Farley.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Have you... So I am one of these people to the point where I did videos on it, but I'm just going to list a few things which I know in the community has been referenced as influential or similar or in some way connected to disco in their eyes. It's kind of might go back to interpretation a little bit. So I'm just going to list them. A book called The City in the City. A TV show called The Wire. A TV show called True Detective. A TV show called Twin Peaks. Trying to remember now if there was any others that people point at. I can't remember off the top of my head. Were any True Detective? I don't know if it could be, but the others could be because they predate. I can't remember when True Detective came out, but were any of those things that you guys liked, watched, were inspired by in any way for Disco Elysium, or is it people joining their dots again?
I think like all of these are things that we have. Well, I mean, Zaum has quoted at certain times. I personally have not seen True Detective or Wire, not a single episode. Twin Peaks is the closest one because I know me, Robert and Duix, we again the same friend who got us the Planescape Torment. He burned us 2 DVDs with both seasons of Twin Peaks, and we binged it in 48 hours. We just kept going. We watched it, and it definitely was a huge influence, but I don't know if it was actually influence on Disco Elysium. Like it influenced
your psyche more than anything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. But the City and the City is such a huge surprise to me because I think none of us had heard of this, neither of China Meville or the book before people started comparing us to that. And I have not, still to this day, I have not read it. Probably should. But this is one of these weird parallel, what's it called? Parallel thinkings, I guess. Or I don't know. I don't know how to explain this similarity. Maybe if you dabble in the world of magical realism, maybe this is kind of inevitable that you're gonna get to this point. But
well, it's like Marvin Gaye's estate keeps suing people every couple of years because they use, I don't know, a chord or two that was in Heard It From the Grapevine. It's like, well, there are only so many of them, right? Eventually you're going to listen to a song 40, 50 years later and go, that sound a little bit like some of Marvin's iconic music. Like, and there was a question the other day on someone who, looking for advice on making YouTube videos, and they were like, oh, well, I don't want to copy what someone else has done. No matter how original you think you're about to be, I can guarantee some part of it will exist somewhere else. So, like, you can't
100%.
just go for it, yeah.
And also, this is a good moment to, I don't know, give advice. I guess like I've so many times I've gotten to the point in life when I think I have an idea and I'm really enthused about this. I'm psyched about this, and then I go and I tell someone about this idea, and they're like, yeah, this was Annihilation already did that, and then you're like, motherfucker, come on, not me. And natural instinct is, well, if Annihilation already did it, then I guess I'm not going to do it. But the reality of this is that if you're honest to look yourself in the eye and you know you didn't steal it, if you came up with this, then there's a good chance that if you're actually going to start doing it, it's going to be different. It's going to feel different. It's not going to feel like Annihilation. Like this kind of pool of ideas, like in some ways it's limited by the what's the word? Sum of the consciousness of humanity until humanity leaps forward and some new ideas are inserted into our imagination pool. We will be kind of recycling and recombining the same ideas. And honestly, you should not ever be afraid of using something that's already been used. by someone else. Like if you didn't if you didn't rip it off, because like my experience is that new is old plus old. Like that's how stuff comes.
Yeah, there's a very big difference between a blatant rip-off and it'd be like saying Disco Elysium stole everyone's CRPG ideas because it's isometric and it has, you know, skill points and stuff like that. It's just, things become genres and mediums, and people can spin however they want. Good advice. Don't be put off by someone already having. If it's a brilliant idea, you should take it as a compliment that you're not the only one that thought of it, right?
Yeah.
Because then you know you're not crazy, right?
Exactly. Take it as validation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever you do, once you become aware of this, do not read Annihilation, because now you're locked into. You're either gonna copycat it, or you're gonna spend so much energy trying to make something different that it's just gonna
turn
out. Nothing turns out good if you're deliberately trying to be something else. Like that's not a good driving force creatively.
No, agreed. Okay. Ooh. So there's one question I was going to ask in this section, which I think probably belongs in the final questions, to be honest. And it probably, so I'm going to skip one of them. But I am going to ask, so I do remember, so Robert did an interview years ago with GameSpot, and he talked about the Fort Cabinet in particular being something that was extremely challenging, and actually in the end was not as fleshed out as you guys originally intended it to be. Guess, limitations. I'm actually interested, like you confirmed earlier that skills weren't really present in the D&D days, and it was one of the programmers, right, that ended up coming up with it. Is that right?
Skills were present, but talking skills is something. Argo Tuulik, the former lead designer and lead programmer.
Yeah, so
designer and lead programmer.
Yeah, tell us about the formation of skills and the Fort Cabinet in its earliest form. Can you remember that coming about?
Well, honestly, as far as skills go, like the roots do go back all the way to the maybe even Evanir. Like, when you look at it, well, here I have a character sheet from our Rigat game series already. God, I'm trying to think. We were definitely all still living with our moms. I remember that we played this in the kitchen. This already has the physique, motoric, psyche, intelligence.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the skills underneath it. Even I see some of air already exists. There's a lot of stuff that at least at that point would not have translated into a video game, or we didn't have a budget or knowledge how to translate it. But like I think this would have been like a section under physique, trying to translate it here now. Supra properties of the human organism, the adrenaline tap, living pigment, chameleon cells, toxic circulation, loose joints, photosynthesis, this types of things. So essentially, I like, and this is my interpretation. Ultimately, Robert is the final truth on that. But the way I think it went down is that Robert made this call of what skills of this existent 4 or 5 iterations of Elysium, what of these would translate into a video game. And obviously, already with even with the 24 skills that we ended up in Disco, not all skills are created equal. Like there are fucking over 1,000 instances of rhetoric and perception, I think, and only like 300, 400 iterations of savoir-faire, or I think hand-eye coordination is the most underused skill. So basically, you have to be smart and find this balance where if you have too few skills under attributes, then you kind of get this weird silence where there's not enough happening because all the skills are not talking all of the time. And you kind of have to vector in that maybe for certain builds, only 2 skills speak up. And if you now cut one of them, then not only is it gonna feel really hollow, but it also removes the ability of skills to be in dialogue with each other. But on the other hand, if you go overboard, then you end up with this disappointing builds where somebody maybe put all of their skill points into a skill that they only got to use. Because earlier when I said checks, I meant passive checks, like 1,000 passive checks. But when we talk about white checks and red checks, these numbers go way down. And if for the entirety of a 40-hour RPG, you've built a character that can use the skill that they invested all their points in 4 times, well, that's just going to be a very disappointing experience. So in the end, I think Robert just narrowed down what are the most usable. Some are like, and this is another thing I've now kind of had to think about a lot in regards to, let's say other game design, that there are some skills you need as a writer, as a game designer, because they are functionally extremely useful. Whatever your equivalent of perception is, reaction speed, rhetoric, very useful skills. These are always these are also skills that whenever you feel that there's kind of a silence in the dialogue, like Harry hasn't gotten to say something for a long time, Kim has been kind of silent, you can always throw a perception skill in there. Perception can always notice something. It's that or something like this. But then you also want these beautiful, mysterious skills like shivers and esprit de corps that don't have so much functional use, that they're kind of difficult to throw in there organically. And then you end up then you also have these functional but not always in a fun way skills like hand-eye coordination. Like, yes, it makes sense that if your character tries to do something in the game world, there is some sort of a physical or motorics related skills governing that. But the ways this kind of a build can interact with the world, it is kind of limiting. Like imagine if you played only hand-eye coordination build. Like, in order for it to be rewarding for the player, we can also get into the territory where now we need to build a whole game for the motorics character, so it feels as good as.
Is that why it was important to have? So you talk like there was always the possibility of people doing like nothing but intellect, right, and constantly pouring points into there. Is that why? So there's 2 things that I could immediately recognize that were, seem purposely designed to make people consider the other skills. That's the passive failures, which I guess act as not only indications that you're not quite hitting the numbers that you could be, or there is still something going on. Like, it's not just about you having 25 logic. You've also, because you've got no endurance, and you're weak as shit, you're going to fail to deal with these things being said to you, and it makes the dialogue more fleshed out. Because like if you only have ever had those intellect skills chiming in, it gets very boring, right? And everything else would just be vanilla. So having those like low skill investments still have a purpose in showing you're not capable of X, Y, and Z. You're not capable of seeing that, or you're not capable of understanding what they're trying to tell you. And then the other one is the obvious one, which is the very clear. You only have a 17% chance of rolling this because of your skill and the amount of points, and B, these other factors that come into it?
Yes, kind of like I would say it like this. One of the things I feel that there were two concepts in Disco that we didn't succeed fully in delivering. One of them was failure is fun. Like, yes, often more often than not it is, but there are still sometimes like when I talk to people, even people who are diehard fans, I very often hear that, yeah, I loaded my game till I succeeded, right? Like still, like we didn't get across this confidence that we had in please fail. It's gonna be more fun. Like for example, for the Hardy Boys checks, I think I spent like 6 months writing all the different variations of failure and making sure that you see at least 4 different I think it's 3 different failures before something starts repeating. So you kind of you're looking forward to failing. But whether we succeeded in kind of developing it mechanically in the background is even not relevant, because I think we didn't succeed in communicating to the player that trust us. So sometimes failing is more fun than succeeding. Like this was kind of the writer mindset that I at least had, that I would like to keep the player in these moments longer and in this kind of failure loops. Even the word failure is such a subconsciously intimidating word, and this is again where this Kim factor comes in. That Kim needs to say that it's okay, like it's okay to try multiple times. So this is one of the things. And the other thing is the term we used was overdeveloped skills and underdeveloped skills. So essentially, like in some ways, the optimal build should be all freeze, because then you don't verge into any of the extremes. The idea was, and again we ran out of time, that both skills that are too low and skills that are too high start affecting your game in a negative way. Like electrochemistry and Half-Life are good examples that in these extreme cases where you have maxed out you're playing a 6 physique build already and your Half-Life is maxed out, we take the control away from the player. You're now a victim of your rage, or this kind of skills start acting on their own, basically, if you overdevelop them. Like in theory, that was like a good way to get the player to diversify a little bit. And there are instances where it does work, but these are kind of obscure, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend anyone playing like this one skill build to go to come upon these few examples where it actually works like that. This is definitely one of these concepts we intended and still intend to improve on in the future, because I honestly feel that there's so much there. Like there's so much there. I went on a bit of a tirade.
No, it's brilliant. I could sit here all day and listen to it, to be honest. Which means everybody else can, and will love it. So it's interesting. I definitely flicked my eyebrow because I was laughing inside at your recommendation to not max stats out, which is basically the foundation of how I started my channel. It's all like max stats, but I get to say it's for research purposes entirely. But it's interesting actually, because so there used to be a mod that you could get where you could force failures, or you could change the skills on the fly, but they did a language update very recently which broke it basically. And I always intended to have something on the flip side which covered failure, and I was like, you could I could probably still do it. It's a lot of effort, and I think I'm probably past that point now. But it's interesting, all of this max stat stuff it's fascinating to see what all of the legendary checks and the godly checks and all of these interactions look like. But I'm very conscious that I've kind of missed half of the dialogue, because none of the passive failures happen, none of the consequential successes that happen on the back of a failure occur. And as much as I probably like unearthed quite a bit of Disco Elysium, I haven't really, because that's not what the nature of the game is, intended to be. But it's an interesting look, right?
Interesting fact to drop here in the middle is this relates to this kind of unique circumstances Disco was made under, and I guess like this unique lack of certain producerial pressure or pressure of I can't say pressure of finances. We were under a very heavy pressure finances wise, but I guess like, let's say producerial pressure. And when Tora and I started work on X7, first of all, like we needed to crunch a lot of numbers to understand like what is like word counts and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And comparing the word count, average reading speed, average playthrough time, the math said, and I believe the math, Tora being an astrophysicist, mm-hmm. she's good at this stuff. The math said that an average player sees 60% or less of the entire dialogue in the game in average playthrough. And mm-hmm. if you think about it, in this kind of modern world, it's insane. Like no producer would okay this kind of
the extra 40%.
Yeah. Like this is a waste. Like why do we put money into something like a very small percentage of players sees? But to me, my belief is unshakable that this is very much like a cornerstone of this magic of Disco. And this again echoes back to these games we talked about earlier, especially the Fallout games and Planescape Torment, that taught us that sometimes you have these situations where you, the player, think that you came up with this like a unique thought that, what if I go back to this character and like I have this item or something. Like there's no way the developers thought of it. And you go there, you actually get a reaction to this. Like this feels so special. And this Disco micro reactivity is so much built on that. And in order for it to work, you do need this width, not just length.
No, I agreed. It's one of my favorite things, if not, it's probably, well, there's lots of favorite things I have about Disco Elysium, but like little things like, I'll just give you one example because I want to get us into Disco proper. You can read Kim's notebook if you decide to go through the entire field autopsy without ever getting your ledger. Most people, because of the way that Kim kind of guides you away from the scene, says, first of all, you throw up, you need to go and spend half an hour doing something else. You come back, you complete your assessment of the body. Kim says, I've had enough. I can't, I need a break from the smell. But if you're a maniac like me and you go, well, I know I can do all of that and just skip through it all with max stats, because you haven't got your ledger yet, you don't have the piece of paper to do the field autopsy, and therefore you have to have Kim's, and then and you have the opportunity to read it. And then to double down on that, depending on, let's say, for example, you've behaved fairly normal and you've done it on day one, Kim is fairly kind about you. If you have done a fascist run and you decide not to do all of that until, I don't know, day 5, Kim is, and you've been drinking the whole time, Kim is less complimentary of you. And when I first got to that was when I was like, this is like the fact that they actually went to the trouble of thinking about every single one of those, like the odds of people doing that are so small, but you still had it's just that, and you're absolutely right. That is exactly why Disco Elysium is amazing. And to your point, it sounds like you need, like, I don't know, a Sven Vick from Larian who is willing to just give people that agency, right? Because in the modern era, game development become so so much less about freedom of creativity and so much more about shareholders and all the rest of it. And I know I'm speaking your language now, of course. It's just it's frustrating that we don't see that kind of leap happen as much anymore.
Yeah. Like time is the most valuable resource, and there is a reason why building a Rolls-Royce Phantom takes 2,500 man hours, and building like a Citroen Berlingo only takes 12. Like it is expensive. But I think I remember Robert also saying in one of the interviews that 70% of Disco Elysium is a rewrite, and 50% of that is a rewrite of a rewrite. And honestly, it goes deeper, because some characters. I think probably Kuno is the biggest one. I think Kuno went through 15 rewrites.
Wow.
Evrard 9, something like this. René and Gaston, funnily enough, René and Gaston were my test characters. I kept going back to them, and even now when I play them, I still see things that, God, I wish I had time to fix. So this is another thing that I kind of found incredibly frustrating in this neo the second that this notion that the first draft of anything would be good enough, or even to entertain the idea that the first draft would be good enough, and not to even aspire into trying to make it better. Like coming from this artistically incredibly nurturing experience of you do it till it's good, to something that forces you to treat what you consider art as a product, as some kind of a parking app or something like that. It's just artistically, it just kills your soul.
Yeah, I can imagine. It must be awful, and a world apart, the two environments. Right. Unbelievably, we're now going to talk about a game called Disco Elysium.
No way.
That is the end of part 1. Please check out part 2, where we go in depth into Disco Elysium, Argo's characters, the unanswered mysteries of the game, and all of the wild fan theories you can think of. Thank you for watching, and I hope you can stick around for the next part.